Welcome to Believing the Word with author and pastor Dan Shunk. This program is a ministry of Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Here's what's coming up in today's message.
This whole chapter or more, it begins by personifying the city itself. Jerusalem pictured as this woman, as this widow, the one that used to be a princess. It's describing the city as a princess and now has been made into a forced laborer at the end of verse 1, been brought down so low from being seen as royalty to being seen as the slave girl.
Historically speaking, prophets in Scripture are never welcomed by their people. The prophet Jeremiah was no exception. As he spoke on the Lord's behalf, warning his people of their sinful condition and their imminent judgment, the people not only rejected Jeremiah's message, but persecuted him. After bearing this for decades and persisting, Jeremiah's prophecies ultimately came true, and all was lost. The walls, the city, the homes, and most of all, the temple was utterly wiped away by Babylon. Despite all of this, Jeremiah didn't write a long "I told you so" to the people. In an extended period of reflection over what had just happened, he mourned for his people and his home. This mournful tome is still recited every year by Jewish people to commemorate the destruction of the first temple. Now here's Pastor Dan in the book of Lamentations as he continues his message, Drowning in Depravity.
All right, so here we are. Join me in Lamentations tonight, opening up a new book. It's not, I think some people say Lamentations or something like that. It's not Lamentations, it's Lamentations, from the word lament or to mourn, to cry. It's actually a lament, or to lament is actually a groaning out loud. So we open up tonight in the book of groaning out loud. The book of Lamentations. It's just a few short 5 chapters long, and we will take this in 3 sections. Lord willing, we'll look at this tonight, next week, and the following week, and that will be the entire book of Lamentations. It's really a funeral dirge, is what this book is. Most of the time, when this book is still used today, it is used and it is read complete. From beginning to end, it's read from beginning to end on the days of commemorating the temple's destruction, because that's when this was written. This was written during the 3 months. We just completed Jeremiah, right? We saw Jeremiah at the destruction of Babylon in 586, at the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon. In 586, we saw Jeremiah decide to stay there in the city and not go back to Babylon. And in those 3 months of staying there before he was hoisted away to Egypt against his will, he wrote this. He wrote this 5 chapters of Lamentations, sitting in that place of solace, in that place of intentional quiet. Do you know what I mean? Have you had a place like that in your life where it's been set up? You were set up by God to just be in a place of maybe mourning, but a place of there's no activity. There's nothing to do. The Lord wants you to be in a place of reflection. And that is what these 5 chapters are. In fact, it was brought up earlier today. When we get to chapter 3 specifically, Jeremiah is going to be talking about his efforts. Lord, I want to go forward. I want to do things for you. And none of it's working. You know why? Not because Jeremiah didn't have a sincere heart that he wanted to move forward and do things for the Lord. No. It's that the most important thing he could have done for the Lord at that time was to sit there and reflect on what just happened in the destruction of this mighty city and its people. That was the most important thing for Jeremiah to do for these short few weeks, this short season of his life. That was the most important thing to do. You know, there's seasons in your life where you're going to grow, and there's seasons in your life where you're going to let the roots grow down. And I would relate this to a time when you're letting your roots grow deep. You're getting reestablished. You're getting reaffirmed. You're getting recommitted. You're not bursting out with activity to serve the Lord in other ways. You're growing deep. And some of that is falling in love with God. Some of that is readjusting to His purposes for your life. You ever have those times of reflection where you're just like, yeah, Lord, I got to adjust that. I got to fix. Yeah, I see what you mean. And we don't get that enough. We don't slow down enough to do that. Well, this book, these next 3 weeks, Lord willing, if we're here for all 3 weeks to do these 5 chapters, that's what it's going to be. So in the next 3 weeks, I'm going to set you up so big right now. In the next 3 weeks, you're not going to have hardly any yeah, we can do it. I'm not, in the next 3 weeks, you're never once going to leave being pumped up like, oh man, I'm going to go save people now. I'm going to go interact with the lost. And that's not going to be the next 3 weeks in the book of Lamentations. This is going to be a time where the Lord is going to impress on our hearts this question of, where are we at? Where are we at? Do we need to reflect? Do we need to slow down and let something that God's been telling us go deep and grow down deeper into our heart with a newfound commitment? That'll be the types of challenges that the Lord's going to bring out. So no doubt these 5 chapters were written by Jeremiah. This book, Lamentations, in the Septuagint, which the Septuagint is just a Greek translation of the Old Testament. In the Septuagint, it has a prefix to this book of Lamentations at the beginning of it. And this is what it says. I want to read it to you. It says, "It came to pass after Israel was led into captivity and Jerusalem was laid waste, that Jeremiah sat weeping and lamented this lamentation over Jerusalem and said," and then it goes right into verse 1. So even there before the time of Christ, this book was attributed clearly to Jeremiah as his mourning over Jerusalem just after Babylon destroyed it. Each of these 5 chapters are acrostics for each verse, except when you get to chapter 3. It's interesting. Chapter 1 is 22 verses, and each verse is an acrostic. Chapter 2, same thing, 22 verses. Chapter 4 and 5, same thing. Chapter 3 in the middle, 66 verses. And it's every 3 verses it goes by the next consecutive letter of the alphabet. And we've touched on this before, but do you remember why would the scripture have passages like this that are laid out in an acrostic? The first verse here of chapter 1 is Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And then the second verse goes right into the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Beth, and so on down. Why would it do that? Well, number one, it shows completeness. Okay, somebody was handed the scroll of Lamentations at some point and said, "Here, read this," and you could immediately know, oh, this is all of it. This is complete. It didn't get cut off. It's every single letter of the alphabet is there. Here it is. So it shows completeness, but it also aids in memorization. Because even to this day, the Jewish people will recite this book, these 5 chapters, on that day of commemorating the destruction of the temple. The 9th day of Ab, A.B., is when they recognize and they read this book. That is typically in the spring-ish is when that is. And so they still read this to this day. And we pointed this out, I think, at the end of Jeremiah, but it's interesting that the temple in the days of Jeremiah that was destroyed on the 9th day of Ab, well, later on, of course, they rebuild the temple. And then in the days of the Romans, after Christ's crucifixion, that temple was destroyed as well. And it was on the same exact day. The 9th day of Ab. I think that's amazing, the way the Lord did that on purpose. I think we're going to find a little interesting nugget when we get to heaven about why he had that happen on the exact same day of for the temple. Both temples, same day, and massive amount of years apart from each other. So just very interesting. So through this mourning cry of Jeremiah that we're going to read, we're specifically here in chapter 1 and 2 today, we're going to see 4 ways that sin would want us to drown in depravity. I made a big point in my open to talk about how sometimes the Lord wants us to sit there and just soak it in, take it in, reflect, be quieter. That's true. But one of the things I'm not saying is to sit there in depression. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you should sit there and woe is me. It's never going to change. It can't get better. Right? See the difference? To sit there and reflect on something that happened. Wow, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What do you think the Lord's wanting to do here? That's good. But, oh man, I knew this was going to happen. This always happens to me, right? This is what's going to always happen for me. These are the thoughts of depression. That's not what this is. And so sin would want you to stay in that place and fall into depression. That's not what this is for. And so while we're reading chapter 1 and 2 today, I want us to look at some ways that sin tries to do that to you. It tries to keep you in that place of not just reflection, but depression. Make sense? So I want to open up these two chapters with that in mind. So we start chapter 1, verse 1. The first way that sin would hold you and drown you in depravity is that sin deprives you of friendly comfort. Friendly comfort. Remember, all of these things that we're going to be reading about never should have, never needed to have happened. It didn't have to happen. All of these things happened to the people of Israel and Judah because they chose it. They chose their sin. The prophet Jeremiah wrote, it was only a verse or two that he wrote. No, he wrote 52 chapters, right? Jeremiah wrote a long book warning them year after year, right? They chose this. They chose this. And this is the natural results of what sin would do and did do to them. And so that's what we're going to read about. Let's take a look at chapter 1, verse 1. How lonely sits the city. Of course, we're talking about Jerusalem itself. That was great with people. It had much people in it. She has become like a widow who was once great among the nations. She who was a princess among the provinces has become a forced laborer. Verse 2. She weeps bitterly in the night. Her tears are on her cheeks. She has none to comfort her. Among all her lovers, all her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. And so this whole chapter or more, it begins by personifying the city itself. Jerusalem pictured as this woman, as this widow, this one that has been put into, the one that used to be a princess. It's describing the city as a princess and now has been made into a forced laborer at the end of verse 1, been brought down so low from being seen as royalty to being seen as the slave girl. That is the picture of this city that's being cast out here. So the idea is that nothing's easy for her now. For royalty, everything's easy, right? Like, oh, I wish I had a bouquet of grapes to eat right now, or something. Oh, there they are. Somebody just brought them in, If a slave girl says that, somebody's liable to say, go get them yourself, right? That's the picture that's being painted. Nothing's going to be easy now. It's going to be hard. In times of grief, all we want is company. And yet here, Jerusalem is pictured with nobody there to help. Everybody wants to help royalty, but nobody wants to help the slave girl. In verse 2, all of her lovers have forsaken her. They've all dealt treacherously. They've all become her enemies. Isn't that interesting? Whenever you're going through adversities, you find out who your real friends are. Have you found that to be true? The moment, really hard things are happening for more than a day, all of a sudden you realize who's not calling you, who's not returning your text, and who is, right? I think of Job's friends right here. You know the best thing Job's friends did for him? They showed up. They just came. They should have shut their mouths sometimes, but they showed up and they came. In fact, it remarks in Job how when they first showed up, they just sat with him. That just the comfort of being with people, right? Isn't that the most important thing? And you remember that. You remember who shows up in your time of need, don't you? You remember that. And that's what you're looking for. That's what you're longing for, is just people to show up. And yet it pictures Jerusalem here as being forsaken. All of the ones that committed as lovers to Jerusalem, they're nowhere to be found. They're not around anymore. And so don't ever get the impression here that there's joy in this kind of destruction, right? God called for this destruction to happen to the city. Remember, we're making a distinction. He didn't call for this to happen to the temple, but he did call for this to happen to the city and for the people to be taken captive. But there's no joy in any of these verses. There's no insinuation from God. There's no insinuation from God's man, the prophet, that there's any sense of joy. Like, oh, that serves you right. And there's not even a sense of, watch this. There's not even a sense of, well, this is going to produce joy for you in the future, so it's good. No. God is keeping them in the moment. And he's saying, I want you to think about what just happened. I want you to be in this place of solemnity, solemnness, quietness, reflection. I want you to be in this place. He's not rushing this forward to say, well, it's working good. Just hold on. Just keep a hold of something. We're getting there. We're really getting there. No, he's not even doing that. For 5 chapters, he wants them in this place to reflect and to let it sink in on why this is, what caused this and what brought them to this place of desolation. And it opens up with Jerusalem having no one to comfort. Now, verse 3, Judah has gone into exile, so not just the city, but all the surrounding area. In verse 3, Judah has gone into exile because of affliction and because of great slavery. She sits among the nations, but she has found no rest. All her pursuers have overtaken her in the midst of distress. In verse 4, the roads of Zion are in mourning because no one comes to the appointed times. The appointed times is really the feast days, right? Think again about, we're talking about the people, that there's no people, there's no comfort, there's no commerce, there's no hustle and bustle of the city life, right? People aren't coming to the feast days, the appointed days. Continuing verse 4, all her gates are desolate. Her priests are sighing. Her virgins are grieving. And she herself is bitter. All of these people that should be joyful and in activity are not. Verse 5, her adversaries have become her masters. Her enemies are complacent. For Yahweh has caused her grief because of the greatness of her transgressions. Her infants have gone away as captives before the adversary. In verse 6, so all her majesty has gone out from the daughter of Zion. Her princes have become like deer. They have found no pasture. The idea, what do deer do if they find no pasture? They're moving on. They're fast. They're not going to wait around. They're not like sheep or cows. They're just going to be like, well, there's nothing here. Let me try this spot 2 inches away. Oh, there's nothing there. Let me try this spot another 2 inches away. No, a deer is like, I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere else. That's the idea. They have found no pastures, so they have fled without strength before the pursuer. So the entire city and the surrounding region it pictures here is sitting empty of her people. No one's using the roads. No one's coming to the appointed festivals and feasts. The virgins are grieving. The idea is that they should be excited about finding a mate and living life and moving forward. And none of this is happening. None of it. Why? Because outside the destroyer has come. Why? The middle of verse 5, it said, because of the greatness of her transgression. God does not shy away from saying that. This didn't happen from some accident or, well, I'm hoping this will kind of help you. No, God has done in verse 5, Yahweh has caused her grief because of the greatness of her transgression. There's no shying away from this. God did this to her. If God did it, it's good. We may not see that very quickly, but it's a good thing. And he never shies away from saying, I did this to them. I wanted them to have this time of reflection. He's not going to let people go and just do their own thing in sin and misery and destroy their life and destroy others' lives. He's not going to allow that to happen. He's going to course correct. And he doesn't shy away from saying that. It's some of the hardest prayers you'll ever pray when you have somebody that you love and you pray, Lord, break them. Lord, whatever you got to do, stop them from doing this thing. It's going to kill them. It's going to harm them. Lord, break them. Have you ever prayed that? You may have to at some point. And look, the other side of that is I stand here at 49 years old as a person that the Lord had to break like 80% of my life to bring me to salvation. And I'm telling you, it was worth it. For whoever was praying, Lord, break them about me. It was worth it. And so don't worry about that person. You're praying, Lord, break them. Okay. Living proof, right? But man, some people need it. Some need it. And that's the only thing that will get their attention. Verse 7, in the days of her affliction and homelessness, Jerusalem remembers all her precious things. They were from the days of old when her people fell into the hand of the adversary and no one helped her. The adversary saw her, and what did they do? They laughed at her ruin. Or maybe you have at the end of verse 7, they laughed at her cessation. Everything stopped is the idea. It's really the word for Sabbath. They're laughing at the fact that there's nothing happening in Jerusalem. That is not the design of anything. That's not the design of a family, of a city, of a life, to do nothing, right? The design of a family is to, what did the Lord tell the church? What part of our mission as the church is go and make disciples? And he said, occupy until I come. And the word occupy is a word for economy. And the word economy is an exchange. There's given, there's taken, there's things happening. And so here's Israel and Jerusalem's adversaries going by, and what are they mocking? They're mocking the fact that nothing's happening. That's not a good thing. And I think some of lazy America needs to wake up and realize nothing happening is not good, right? To just sit at your house and wait for some check to come in and you're going for days about this one. I'll let it go. You get the point, right? We're designed to be hard workers. Hard work was not a part of the fall. People think that hard work was introduced when Adam and Eve fell into sin. That's not the case. Go back and reread the first 3 chapters of Genesis. Hard work began at creation whenever the Lord said to them, go have dominion over these things that I've created. Oh, and then at the curse, at the fall, then it got harder. But we were created for work. We're not created for idleness. And here the enemy is laughing at them because there's nothing happening. In fact, in verse 7, misery is made worse by remembering the previous days when things were going so well. And the idea that it didn't have to come to this. We had a good thing going, right? I think sometimes that's the worst part of sitting in misery, is remembering that it used to be better than this, right? There's a song that Sherry Youngworth sings where she says, it's nothing like before standing on the outside of your door. Breaks my heart when I hear that song, but to me, that song is a reminder of a book like this. Sometimes it's good to remember that what is the opposite of the goodness of having Jesus Christ in our life? Being on the outside of his door. That picture of being on the outside of his door indicates you used to be on the inside of his door. You used to be in there and fellowshipping and having a bang-up time. And now you're on the outside of his door? And so that's pictured here in verse 7. It's nothing like before. Now that they're on the outside and nothing's happening. You just picture there's got to be some Christmas movie out there somewhere, right? Where the poor family member that's distanced from the family is looking in the window on Christmas Day, and they're all having like Christmas in there, and everybody's having a great time, and the poor person's outside shivering in the snow, like looking in at the good time they're having, right? It's got to be a movie like that. Can you think of one? I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know I've seen at least 3 Christmas movies like that. Scrooge, there you go. There's one of them right there. That picture, that it used to be so much better, or it could be so much better. That's the picture here in verse 7. Verse 8, Jerusalem sinned greatly. Therefore, she has become an impure thing. All who honored her despise her because they have seen her nakedness. The idea is they've seen her down to nothing, having nothing to offer. I'm not made up like royalty. I'm just a person. I have nothing to offer. It doesn't mean that they're literally viewing nakedness. You get that. Even she herself sighs and turns away. Verse 9, her uncleanliness was in her skirts. She did not remember her future. Interesting. Now we're going to reflect on the future. She did not remember her future in verse 9. Therefore, she has gone down astonishingly. She has no comforter. See, O Yahweh, my affliction. The enemy has magnified himself. In verse 10, the enemy has stretched out his hand over all her desirable things, for she has seen the nations enter her sanctuary. This is a picture of Babylon coming in and taking the most precious things. The ones whom you commanded that they should not enter into your assembly. In verse 11, all her people are sighing, seeking bread. They have given their desirable things for food. It reminds me in Revelation where it says a piece of bread will buy a bag of gold, and you kind of see the same desperate situation here. They have given their desirable things for food to restore their souls. See, O Yahweh, and look, for I am despised. So the city here is being pictured as completely barren because the enemy has been victorious over them, but it didn't have to be. It didn't have to be. I find this interesting here. It says that this occurred. What did it say in verse 9? This occurred because she didn't remember her future. We just said in verse 7 that it was reflecting on the past. Oh, I had all these wonderful things. We sat like royalty and we've blown it. And now, in verse 9, she didn't remember her future. Isn't that fascinating? You know, the believer, the one that serves the true and living God, whether it's Israel of this day or us today, the one that serves the true and living God, we look at our future as something that's real.
You've been listening to Believing the Word, a ministry of author and pastor Dan Shunk at Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Pastor Dan has been teaching through a series in the book of Lamentations. We'd love to get connected with you and hear about how God is working in your life through this teaching program. You can reach us by phone at 717-500-1102. Again, that number is 717-500-1102. You can also check us out at our website at ccchambersburg.org, where you can learn more about the ministry of Calvary Chapel Chambersburg and find our chapter-by-chapter messages. If you're in the Chambersburg area, we'd love to have you join us Sunday mornings and Thursday evenings on 5121 Coffee Avenue. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back with more from the Book of Lamentations, but until then, this has been Believing the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk.